In 2010, an ominous story would hit the internet. It was unlike anything it had seen before. It took a piece of our collective childhoods and corrupted it. It would rock the internet to its core. This was a phenomenon known as Lavender Town Syndrome. Yes, a creepypasta that comes from the world of Pokémon. A world and game series that a lot of people hold dear. The story spread quickly and soon it was everywhere. We were collectively afraid or intrigued about a mysterious entity that lived within the games we played and the worlds we explored. Many have delved into the world of Lavender Town Syndrome. The story would create a fandom all its own. There were countless stories and theories. We'll discuss some of those later, but the question we'll be searching for is, could it ever happen? Could Lavender Town Syndrome ever happen in the real world? Let's look at the story first. Lavender Town Syndrome first appeared online in a pastebin post. The story is long and tells of a strange occurrence in Japan involving two games. Pokémon Red and Pokémon Green were tangled up in a disturbing series of cases involving children and ending their own lives. Though the games were affecting many individuals, they were not doing so in all cases. The one connecting factor was the games, which led detectives to start looking into the devs behind the games. They came to an early conclusion that what was affecting kids was found only in certain copies of the game, something that drove these kids to end it all. In the original story, Lavender Town is mentioned only 3 times. There's actually something else that is causing these cases, something that isn't fully explained. The first mention of Lavender Town is when the detectives were following up on a rumor that the music from that area had made some children ill. This was ultimately deduced to be a dead end. They even go as far as to rule it out entirely. So what else would be affecting the kids, if it wasn't Lavender Town's music? In another paragraph, there's a sentence about the number of kids dying from the games, dropping off almost entirely. What they believed could have happened was a severe case of mass hysteria. This idea isn't delved into more than this one mention though. As the story unfolds, it tells of a crazed coder who wanted to add something sinister to the game. He wanted to add a line of code that would appear in any game without being noticed. This code would activate if you stepped into the tall grass without a Pokémon at the beginning of the game. In all copies of Pokémon Red and Green, you would be stopped from doing so, but in the corrupted copies, you wouldn't be. Then you are driven to insanity before you take your own life. This is how the end is always found for those who experience these copies of the games. The one glimpse we get to see into what is happening is when the lead detective takes a chance on the evidence. He pulled out the game they'd kept in evidence for 10 years, started it up, and followed the road to some grass. He walked around the grass, but wasn't interrupted by anyone. Time stopped, and then he heard the voices of his dead wife and child. They were beckoning him. Not just them. In his mind, he could see and hear the voices of the dead children. They were all mangled in the different ways they died. Some had cuts, others had burn marks around their necks, and a few were deformed almost beyond recognition. They grabbed at him as he tried in vain to find his family. When he awoke from this waking nightmare, he reached into his drawer, pulled out his gun, and joined his family. This is the original story that was created for Lavender Town. The ending is almost eldritch, an insanity that was somehow coded into these games, one that makes you take your own life. Yet, there is no mention of the song, outside of the earlier dead ends. The story then transitioned from website to website, being posted to 4chan, Image Shack, personal blogs, and some gaming forums including GameSpot. As the story spread, it started to change. This change likely occurred on 4chan, as the story stripped away some of the original elements. The story no longer concerned the detectives, or the search for what was happening with the game. Instead, it took the story to a specific place, Lavender Town. With the location picked, the story kept the childhood mass suicides and pushed the music angle of the story even further, even going so far as to create a story centered just around the music itself. The new story told of a phenomenon that affected Japanese school children with the release of Pokémon Red and Green in Japan. Reports of kids being hospitalized for self-harm or worse were being covered up. The only thing connecting all of these cases was the new Pokémon games that had just taken over Japan. The closer authorities looked, the more it pointed to a specific area in the game, a place called Lavender Town. Lavender Town was always seen as the oddball town in the original Pokémon games. There was a graveyard in town, creepy encounters in the tower, and mentions of ghosts galore. The music was also a departure from the mostly upbeat chiptunes of the rest of the game. It took on a more sinister and otherworldly sound. The song would become the new reason for the hysteria. The legend says that there was a different song that played in the beta versions of the Pokémon games. The song that was changed was, of course, from Lavender Town. The original song incorporated this technique called binaural beats. It also had high-pitched sounds that would play along with the song. These changes caused headaches in those who listened to it, especially those wearing headphones. The effects of the songs could be as mild as a headache or as severe as a depression that leads you to taking your own life. This was how the news story was presented and shared around the internet. A song was causing a mass hysteria in Japan. The new song would be changed in later releases, notably the international ones. With this story becoming a full-on copypasta, it was time for the internet to embrace its own mass hysteria. Further pushing this story was a series of similar ones that would follow during the original hype set by Lavender Town Syndrome. Buried Alive and the White Hand Sprite were two that would become popular in their own right. The real story, though, would come from an upload on YouTube. Someone posted the spectrograph of the original Lavender Town theme. In that spectrograph, they found a ghost sprite, the exact one found in the game. This set the internet alight with theories and speculation. To this day, you can see people asking if Lavender Town Syndrome is real. This comes from that copypasta and the spectrograph. In fact, that's how I first heard about the story, along with another creepypasta called Pokemon Black version or Pokemon Creepy Black. There were hundreds of videos and memes all discussing the effects people had felt while listening to the song. Some claimed to get headaches, others claimed nosebleeds, and even further, some claimed to feel despair after listening to the beta song. The internet had its own form of mass hysteria going on, making the stories real in a way. With all this in mind, we approach the question that I asked in the title of this video. Could Lavender Town Syndrome be real? The actual story was an early creepypasta that had a powerful grip on the internet, but could something like this actually happen? Could a game or any media cause headaches, dread, or even death? Could a song cause you to take your own life? Today I'm going to break down the different sections of the story and see if historically it could be a possibility. In the year 1518, in a city called Strasbourg, a woman walked out of her home in the middle of the day and began to dance. She wasn't accompanied by any music, nor was she joined by a partner. Her reasons for dancing were unknown. She danced and danced for weeks. It wasn't long before she was joined by others. First there was 1, then 40, and then 400. 400 people were dancing in the streets with no reason behind it all. These people didn't choose to dance. No, something was forcing them to dance. They danced day and night with no end in sight. Though there was a reprieve for some of the dancers. A stroke or heart attack brought some dancers to a gruesome end. Reportedly, as many as 15 dancers a day died from what is now known as the Dancing Plague of 1518. The Dancing Plague lasted for months, and they tried so many ways to dispel it. Physicians at the time figured that it was some kind of illness that needed to be burned out of the body. They brought in musicians and professional dancers to help burn the sickness out of them, but it didn't work. Next, they tried banning dancing, which did nothing to stop the spread. Next was the banning of music, which didn't help either. The dance continued for 3 months in total, before finally coming to an end. This is a well-documented case of a phenomenon known as mass hysteria, and one of the earliest on record. I've mentioned mass hysteria a few times already in this video, but let me read you the definition. It is defined as a condition affecting a group of persons characterized by excitement or anxiety, irrational behavior or beliefs, or inexplicable symptoms of illness. This definition comes from dictionary.com. This event falls right into the definition of mass hysteria. One woman started to dance uncontrollably. Soon she was joined by others who had no control over their actions. These people danced and danced until they couldn't dance anymore. Some collapsing from exhaustion, some from death. It would all come to a head when a cure was found. They would need to dance in certain shoes, at a specific place, and with crosses in their hands. Like how this all mysteriously started, it soon ended. A mass hysteria brought to an end by an even stronger belief in the church. The dancing ceased and the people were free to go back to their lives. The ones that survived, that is. One of the main themes of Lavender Town Syndrome, from the story and the internet's obsession with it, was mass hysteria, but also the power of suggestion. In the story, the song supposedly led to children dying. The story doesn't mention if there was a patient zero, a kid who was the first affected by the game. And there's only one mention of mass hysteria that was never followed up on. For this theory to work, there would need to be a first kid who would tell his friends at school about the headaches he received after visiting Lavender Town. Another kid would say that they felt depressed after hearing it. A final kid would say they felt internal dread after visiting the ghostly town. This would then spread to another kid, and another. There would be a wide circulation of children reporting the effects of Lavender Town. Then reports of a single kid dying would circulate. This kid didn't even need to have actually died. The belief just needed to be strong enough in the rumor. This would then lead to other kids doing the same thing. Before you know it, there's an epidemic of children dying all because of a song from a video game. All because one kid claimed to get headaches from the music in the game. This is how mass hysteria works in theory. It only takes one kid having symptoms of it to spread to the other kids. From there it would grow and grow, like a virus that is taking a hold of the minds of those affected. Of course, it doesn't always happen that way, and mass hysteria is still rather rare. Going back to the dancing plague, this case took place a long time ago, back when people were far easier to manipulate and when superstition ran rampant. The dancing plague only needed one person to believe it for others to follow suit. Kids are more susceptible to urban legends and superstitions than adults. They're also far more likely to fall for a mass hysteria attack than adults. Hearing one kid have some kind of issue could lead another kid to believe they also do. This is how outbreaks happen at elementary schools and even high schools. There are a multitude of stories of mass hysteria taking place at schools. There's even a book that catalogs them all. There even was a recent event that took place only a few years ago. In Tapachula, Mexico, in a middle school in September of 2022, 2 female students would faint. This was only the beginning, as 9 other students would faint before the day was done. Continuing the day, 22 more students would report getting headaches or vomiting. Parents would arrive at the school later to see their kids doubled over on the ground, many of them lying on their backs, likely trying not to faint or vomit again. One girl, Diala, said she saw another pass out and didn't expect to also faint. She said she woke up later on the ground. Several of the students reported smelling something smoky, like the smell of leaves burning up in the mountains, before they were inflicted. The smell led authorities to immediately think of marijuana or other drugs as being the reason for the afflictions. However, all the students tested negative for any drugs. Later at the hospital, the official diagnosis from doctors was a panic attack, at least for one girl. The others didn't receive a diagnosis as far as the reports go, which didn't seem to matter as the kids were all back at school by the following week. They all seemed to have fully recovered. 2 weeks passed, and another incident was reported in a rural town 150 miles away from Tapachula. 68 students had either fainted, vomited, or become disoriented. One girl even reported she felt like ants were crawling inside of her mouth. 96 hours later, another incident was reported at the Tapachula school. This time it was 18 kids who suffered from the same afflictions as before, including the same girl from before. This was only the beginning. 2 months passed and the same afflictions were being reported at various locations. 227 children were reported to have been hit with the fainting spells. These incidents were hundreds of miles apart, yet each and every one held a similar story. There were many theories thrown out. Drugs were the first one that everyone latched onto, even though most of the children came back negative on tests. There were mentions of the cartel, and yet more about the schools or government trying to hide the real reasons for the incidents. Yet, among them all, there was one that held more weight than the others: mass hysteria or mass psychogenic illness. This was an option that no one wanted to test. They feared how society would look upon these kids who were affected. An expert weighed in on the debate and said that it was the most likely scenario. He said that kids are more likely to believe in superstitious things. He also states that mass hysteria is likely to happen in places of community and strict hierarchies, like schools. These compounds create the perfect environment for mass hysteria to strike. There are a few events over the last century to back up these claims. It happened in England, Tanzania, the United States, and Nepal, to name a few. These events were unexplainable and happened to adolescents in large groups. Stress is a powerful tool that can make the body do very harmful things. It can make the body and mind eat away at themselves, especially in cases of kids who have not fully developed their mental capacities yet. In the story of Lavender Town Syndrome, it's never stated if it was mass hysteria. No, instead it's just this song that has this sway over kids. Yet, it could have easily been one kid following another. Luckily, there have been no reports of mass hysteria leading to mass suicides. As for the kids in Mexico, the official diagnosis was a mixture of the internet and lasting effect of the pandemic leading to the incidents. They claim that there could be a link between the two and how immune systems developed while not at school for 2 years. Stress was also included as part of this diagnosis, though the stressor was never named. So this is a possible theory. Lavender Town Syndrome could have been caused by mass hysteria, one affecting kids as they all experienced a shared experience of the creepy Lavender Town area. It could be plausible, but there has never been a reported mass hysteria that has led to mass suicide. Well, what if we took this from a different angle? What is the part that leads to the kids' deaths in the story? In the original, it came from some evil code, but pushing that aside, what is it? It's the song. Lavender Town Syndrome is focused on the song and the town. Can a song lead you to take your own life, or even put that thought into your mind? The year is 1933. A Hungarian composer is depressed and writing out his feelings. He works on a song that he hopes will have some kind of impact on the people who listen to it. The melody is solemn, it reeks of pain and anguish, and speaks of the world that is at war. The melody is done and the lyrics have been added, but the song has little traction. A poet who is going through a recent tribulation would happen upon the song and write his lyrics to the music. They too are solemn and heavy. The words hurt like a knife across the skin. The song is now complete. It is the culmination of two people dealing with grief. The song still isn't very popular. People hear it, but it doesn't seem to be resonating with anyone. No matter how good the melody may be, it's not clicking. Then a story comes out. A girl is found dead in Vienna. She drowned herself. She didn't leave behind a note or anything. Though, clutched in her hand was a piece of paper. It was the sheet music for a song called Gloomy Sunday. Soon the story of this tragedy spreads, from country to country and person to person. Another is found dead. He took his own life with a note that is quoting the lyrics of the song. Another and another. A woman is found dead in her home with the song playing over her record player. As the tragedies begin to pile up, the world is soon gripped by a song that matches the era in which it was written. A tale of tragedy and loss. Gloomy Sunday made its way to the States with a very specific story attached to it. They sold the song as Gloomy Sunday, the Hungarian suicide song.
Szomorú vasárnap 100 fehér virággal, vártalak, kedvesem, templomi imával. Álmokat kergető vasárnap délelőtt, bánatom hintaja.
Gloomy Sunday was a song written by a Hungarian composer, Rezso Seress. He wrote lyrics to it that appear to be lost to time. Instead, we have lyrics by Laszlo Havor, a poet who happened upon the song. The song was written about the state of the world, as the original title was roughly translated to "The World is Ending." This is fitting for a song that was written during World War II by a man from Hungary. The world was a devastating place at the time, and the song reflects that in its tone and lyrics. Those lyrics were changed to be about a lover who has died and wants to join them in death. The theme changed, but the energy stayed the same. During the original publication of the song, there were a number of deaths reportedly attached to it. The original number placed it at 17 in Hungary. These numbers were not verified, but it was verified that the song was banned from being played in public at the time. The reason was blamed on the aforementioned deaths. Something about the gloomy and depressing nature of the song made some who listened to it commit the final act. At the time, this number was already at an all-time high, making the song's presence in public all the more dire. A rumor even stated that before the public banning of the song, the total number of deaths had reached 100. Hearing this, the rest of the world jumped at the opportunity to publish the song. Even if the world was at war, people still wanted to make money. They knew they could market the song, and they would with the tagline I mentioned before. An article in Time magazine dated back to 1936 had this to say about the song. Gloomy Sunday droned along in a comparative obscurity until last month. Then it began to make news aplenty. Budapest police, investigating the suicide of a shoemaker named Joseph Keller, found that Keller had left a note in which he quoted lyrics from composer Seress's poignant "The World is Ending." Further inquiry revealed that the lugubrious ballad had persuaded 17 other impressionable Magyars to take their lives. 2 shot their brains out while hearing a gypsy band play the piece. Others killed themselves listening to recorded versions. Several leapt into the Danube, clutching the sheet music. The Budapest police banned Gloomy Sunday. This article, which has no author attached, discusses the story attached to the song. It was being sold as a song that caused those who listened to it to take their own lives. They mentioned that the police didn't intervene when the song was published and released to the US, with English lyrics and no warning attached. The English lyrics were kept as close to those written by the poet as possible, though some claimed that they still did not have the same effect. Here is an excerpt. Sunday is gloomy, my hours are slumberless. Dearest, the shadows I live with are numberless. Little white flowers will never awaken you, not where the black coach of sorrow has taken you. Angels have no thought of ever returning you. Will they be angry if I thought of joining you? This is the first part, but it gets darker in the second half. Gloomy is Sunday, with shadows I spend it all. My heart and I have decided to end it all. Soon there will be candles and prayers that are sad, I know. Let them not weep, let them know that I'm glad to go. Death is no dream, for in death I'm caressing you. With the last breath of my soul, I'll be blessing you. In some versions, there is a third section that adds a more uplifting note to the sadness conveyed by the lyrics. That aside, the tone and story is pretty bleak. It speaks of a person who has lost their love. They wish to join them in death and are ready to take the plunge. It's no wonder this song was considered the Hungarian suicide song. It basically beckons those who listen to their end. This was the spread of the song. The story was the driving factor. It didn't matter that the song was depressing. All that mattered was the story that spread it, which in turn made it massively popular. While in the States, no deaths were attached to this song. People reported feeling sad, depressed, and even gloomy, but no one reportedly died from it, at least according to most news outlets. There were others that claimed over 200 people died from it worldwide. These sources are hard to track down and verify, though. In the years following its release, there'd be one more name added to that list of potential deaths. The composer Seress would take his own life by jumping from his apartment window. He had done so with the reason being blamed on the song. He felt that he had not added to the world and instead hindered it, hurt it. The deaths weighed heavily on his mind up to the end. The story has been reported, but it also has not been verified. The song has received accolades and covers in the many years since its publication. It would even receive a ban in the States and was banned from the BBC until 2002. This has lent validity to the story and urban legend attached to it. The deaths are hard to verify. They are mostly word of mouth that has spread from Hungary to the rest of the world. These stories persisted throughout the years, until they became a fact. Something that you can't verify but many believe to be true. There are a lot of facts about the story behind the song that are hard to verify. But one thing that is true, when something gets media attention, especially a depressing song, it can be linked to suicides. Over the years, many have used songs as their note of sorts. They've used many songs over the years, so it's not impossible to say that this song had this effect on people. This is true in the fact for many different forms of media. There's even a name for it. The Werther effect. This term comes from a book called The Sorrows of Young Werther. The book tells of a young man who dies after being rejected by his love. The book soon had a large number of copycat deaths, even down to wearing the same clothing and going out in the same way. They linked it to the loneliness of the character and what they felt themselves. The Werther effect means to take one's own life in a way that is similar to a celebrity death or one that has happened in a popular piece of media. This effect has been studied for years and has shown similar results across most forms of media, from books, movies, television, and music. Though the piece of media is linked to the increase of how people end their lives, it hasn't been the cause of it. It affects the most vulnerable who already had ideations. It's not going to make someone not in the mindset suddenly decide to follow suit. This still makes it incredibly dangerous to those who are susceptible to it. This is how Gloomy Sunday could have been real. It could have had this effect on those who listened to it. It could have taken the thoughts to their extremes. With this in mind, could this connect to Lavender Town Syndrome? The song doesn't have lyrics, but it does fill the player with a bit of anxiety and dread. This isn't for everyone, but it has been reported to do so. This usually comes from the power of suggestion, where someone claims to have these effects on them, so you start to believe them as well. What if someone claims that the song made them depressed? So depressed that they wanted it all to end? Could this lead to someone following through with those claims? So far, there's no evidence of that. Even with all that we've uncovered, there's just no connection between a song having that kind of control over a person. The song can't make you do something, only you can. So at the end of it all, Lavender Town Syndrome can't happen. Maybe that's not a surprise for a lot of you. I went into this with the same mindset, but I was determined to check every avenue, to search for every possible connection I could. The problem is that there are subsets of any group that can take media too far. We saw with Slenderman, but luckily we haven't with Lavender Town Syndrome. It's just a creepypasta, one that has an internal hold over the internet. We've covered some pretty intense topics today, so I want to leave you all with some positive vibes. Remember that life is worth living and you are loved by someone. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you all have a good night.